Hello people, let's go through my watch list for next week, and we start as usual on the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we can see here we had the second bearish week here after tapping this previous high here to the left, which we discussed a few weeks already. I'm not really convinced that this is a follow-through and confirmation week, so I will show you here on the lower time frame why I still see there is a case for dollar longs in the near future. We are here on the 4-hour time frame, and we can see initially it looked actually fairly good. We had this tapping the high, then a nice impulsive move to the downside and the first continuation here, and that actually looked fairly nice in the beginning. But then you can see here price went from a correction into the next correction, immediately into another correction. So overall this whole price action is fairly corrective and it's not really progressing. And we know that when we have this kind of running channels, progressive or non-progressive price action, a bit more corrective, then we tend to see a flat flag at the end, which then drops out. So if we see something like that, a structured bear flag at the end of this overall running channel, then I would be more convinced that this is a dollar weakness or a short play then in the dollar. Unless we don't see something very deliberate, I'm still thinking that there is a case actually for dollar longs that can also just be a break to the upside followed by a bullish continuation, and then we are in for the next leg, at least back into the highs or a breakout. So you can see even here on the left, there is still a case for price to go back down here, and it's just a normal retrace, a pause basically before we see the next move to the upside. So I really want to see deliberate price action in this area or an impulsive move into this area with deliberate price action for a continuation short. Then unless I don't see something like that, my bias will still be US dollar long plays next week. Here on euro US dollar, therefore we can see this is again, it's undecided. It's a bit messy price action. We are here on the 4-hour time frame. We did tap here into a smaller liquidity area here to the left. So it would make sense for price to sell off from here in form of kind of a V-shaped recovery play. But then again, we had a nice initial reaction on the high, but then non-progressive price action here on the 1-hour time frame. We can see that fairly clear. So again, here it makes sense in both directions. So if we see that the DXY is correcting further and just slowly dropping further to the downside, or even giving us some bearish confirmation, then there would be a case for euro going to the upside, and we have something like that. If we get a deliberate structure in this area, that would be more than enough volume to drive price up into these areas before we then might see the next bigger reaction. However, again, if I say I'm overall more leaning towards US dollar long plays, so I'm here looking more for a drop out below this area here, so gaining a bit momentum followed by a bearish continuation on the lower time frame, and then I would happily entertain a short in this area. Australian dollar, US dollar is a bit more clear in that regard. We had this 1, 2, 3 larger structure with a nice washout into this area here with this bearish first bear flag continuation structure. Then we had a nice sell-off, reached the first basically target, and then have now a nice V-shaped recovery. And here we have a bit more reaction. There is a bit more impulsive price action confirming this high for now. Looking here on the 15-minute, we can see if that would be a Tuesday afternoon price action or into New York session, that would be a prime example of like just setting an entry here, stop loss above, and then looking for a breakout to the downside. But since this is a Friday evening price action, so it's not something I would entertain immediately. And then if we get here a structured 1-hour flag in this area, or basically the first 2-3 hours more, no, probably more likely 3-4 hours on Monday morning, and price just remains in this area, then I would entertain this kind of play to the downside. However, if the market just gaps on Monday open, then I would prefer basically for price to drop further below. So like basically confirming that as the first confirmation, continuation confirmation, and then having a bear flag continuation on the lower time frame somewhere in this area, which would give me enough room to manage the trade from an area like that somewhere in the middle of the run into the first low here. And if that's the trade which then goes, then yeah, even better. Pound US dollar is something we were looking for longs initially, but we discussed last week there is an argument for a short in this area as well. We had this very nice washout candle here last week. We now have a bullish candle with still a strong wick and overall with still a bit more bullish pressure. But if we see where it is positioned overall, I'm leaning more towards a short, and you can see here on the 4-hour time frame, there is an argument for multiple scenarios now. We have here a 1, 2, 3, a bit a messy structure here right now. Like actually the structure was fairly nice here, but then this is messy price action into Friday evening. And there is an argument for price to just drop out of this structure followed by a lower time frame continuation. That's something I would entertain because that would give me enough room to the low here of the structure. There is also an argument for price to just form a middle section, a much larger continuation structure in this area, retesting maybe even these lows here to the left or these smaller liquidity areas here, but that would take so much more time. But there's an argument for that would make sense basically. And on the other hand, if we see price just gaining momentum to the upside in the beginning of next week, followed by a bull flag continuation on the lower time frame, I would change my overall bias and then look for longs. But I'm not going to look for longs as long as we are trading in this area here below, because that's just too messy and price can do so many different things. I want to see clear confirmation first. US dollar yen. On the weekly time frame, we can see here we still have a bit bullish momentum. It's not too strong, but there is an argument for price to go back up to the highs to close this gap here to the left. We are here actually on a fairly visible, that's on a 4-hour time frame. Let me see here. We have here a fairly strong liquidity area here to the left where price just tapped into. And then again, we would expect, if it's really an area of significance, we would expect a bit more aggressive price action in this area. We did not get that. Instead, again, we get this corrective undecided price action. And on the lower time frame, there is an argument here. We have a bit steeper 1, 2, 3 flag into this liquidity area here to the left. A nice bullish reaction. And that's what I'm looking for now. If this structure here is basically complete, then we might see a small hover here in this area. And if I get a deliberate 1-hour flag, I would entertain a long in this area for the next leg to the upside. On the other hand, it would also still make sense for price to remain even longer in this area here on the high. And we might also just see price does not really form a proper continuation flag here. Instead is forming a bigger structure, and then we get a 1, 2, 3 in this area here for the next leg to the upside. Euro pound on the daily time frame, you can see here we had a very nice washout candle on the high. We had an initial bearish high test, then a bullish high test, which basically everything washed out here on top. However, on the 4-hour time frame, you would expect basically a follow through to the downside, and that's what I'm overall looking. But you can see here we're still trading within this a bit more messy price action. So I'd like to see a price dropping out first below this price action, followed by a lower time frame bear flag continuation to then enter a short. As long as we are trading above within this area here, the long still makes sense. Euro New Zealand dollar, we are still looking for longs like last week. Price is still stalling on the high. Let's go to the weekly again. We did have a bearish week, but it's not a strong week. It did not even retrace 50% on the previous week. We have wicks on either sides, and we have a lower high, and therefore this looks more like a larger bull flag in the making, which makes sense overall where it is positioned. So that's something I would consider on the lower time frame, because price basically did everything necessary so far. So if we get here maybe even on the 15-minute But yeah, this would be ideal. However, Euro New Zealand dollar tends also to gap on Monday and show some messy price action after market opening. So, but if we remain in this area a bit more for then a 1 hour flat flag, I would entertain a long here in this area, because even if price is just, let's go back to the 1 hour or even 4 hour, even if price just creates a larger bull flag structure for then a 3 touch, like coming back down one more time for then the like a 1, 2, 3 in this area, then it would still make sense to enter along here already. This is a weak potential first base, so you could argue that's already done, a 1, 2, 3, and that's why I would entertain along in this area already. You can see here we have enough room, so we are back here on the 15 minutes. If we get just the same in a slightly higher up here, that's also completely fine with me if we trade in this area for a long continuation. Pound Canadian on the daily time frame, we can see we're still positioned for potential shorts. We finished these overall structures which we discussed before already. We are trading below this whole piece of price action here to the left. We did not even reach the first initial target for a short. The size of the overall continuation still is in proportion. So I'm now just looking for price here on the lower time frame, on the 1 hour time frame, to basically finish this larger corrective structure here. And you can see here there's an argument for a structure within structure. We have here a potential 1, 2, 3 into this previous high for then a short continuation in this area. Australian dollar yen. On the, let's just stay on the 1 hour time frame. We have here this 1, 2, 3 into the high. We still have more highs to the left. You can see that on the higher time frame we had very nice 1, 2, 3 into the high, and even the last leg was a 1, 2, 3. So price did everything necessary. We had a nice initial impulsive move, but then this overall structure is completely out of proportion. It's too large. If we would have this structure down here, that would be prime for a short continuation. This, on the other hand, is a bit, price leaves us some clues. So initially it looked nice here for a short, and then we tapped this lows here, or this structure here to the left, and had a very nice impulsive move to the upside now. So this again on the 15 minute, you can see is fairly clean price action. So if that would be again somewhere during the week into New York session, then there is an argument for setting entry order here, stop loss here, and then see if price breaks out to the downside and you're in for a trade. That would overall make sense. However, over the weekend and with the size and everything, there is more likely now for price to go back up at least into this previous high before we then see another reaction. So this was my overall preferred game plan in this pair. However, if we see Monday a drop, gaining momentum to the downside, followed by a lower time flag continuation here, then I change my bias and look for shorts. New Zealand dollar yen on the 4 hour time frame. This is like kind of a nice example of a structure evolving. We had that a few weeks on watch, on and off. We had these multiple different patterns here. First we had this one, a nice sell-off. We came back up, then the pattern evolved into this 1, 2, 3. We sold off, and we have now a potential third time where this overall pattern evolves into a 1, 2, 3. And here we have a nice impulsive move. We are stalling in the middle of the run basically, and I'm now looking for price to finish this continuation structure, basically coming back one more time here for a 1, 2, 3, entering along for the last leg at least. Finishing the overall structure before we see bigger reaction. Pound Australian dollar on the daily time frame, we are still in an area for a short continuation. It's not the cleanest price action, but again we had this overall very corrective price action here to the left, finally broke out, and now are still trading below this area. As long as we are trading below this area, I'm looking for short continuations. And here on the 1 hour time frame, yeah, you can see here there is an argument that we basically tapped this previous low here to the left. We have an impulsive run, then here a bull flag continuation, and are now looking for price to go back up, closing this gap here into this liquidity area, which was the start of the last final impulsive move to the downside. And then we are looking here for a reaction for a short continuation, something like that. So that's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.